Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we are doing a patch notes breakdown of Update 7 and all the new champions that came with this update. I have been kind of delaying this video a little bit because they tend to at the moment split the update between champions and also between the actual content. So I wanted to do it all in one go rather than doing two split videos. It's just a little bit easier. But what we're going to do in this video, we're going to go through the official Raid patch notes that got released last week. Then I'm going to give you the unofficial Raid patch notes, which is basically the information from the game code and behind the scenes information that is actually quite relevant some of the time and doesn't always make it into the official patch notes. So let's take a look at the official Raid patch notes. They put this together on the day of the release. It follows the highlights, and I like to go through it just to see if there is anything to note. So obviously we had a live arena beta test. That seemed to go very well. I played a bit of live arena yesterday. I found it really fun, although there is some intrinsic issues with the system that I think could cause problems long term. That's for another video really to talk about, but it is now live in the game and it is following a set schedule. We also have a new champion here, Quintus Triumphant, which you can get from basically playing live arena. Everyone should be able to get Quintus. We're going to do a bit of a math breakdown in terms of how long it's going to take for various different people depending on how many gems you buy the refills with. But Quintus looks like he's going to be a very strong nuker for the current meta, which is buff meta. You know, once there's buffs out, his passive is going to do a lot of damage. We're going to look at that in more detail when we look at the unofficial patch notes. We've also got a Great Hall expansion. I really wouldn't call it an expansion, maybe. I mean, we were meant to get a rework. They've basically added a second Great Hall with area bonuses. And for some reason, these area bonuses are very weird selection in general. We've got one for Potion Keeps, but we don't have one for Sand Devil and Iron Twins. I'm not really sure what the situation is there. Again, we're going to go into detail in terms of upgrading the Great Hall, how long is it going to take, all these sorts of things when we look at the unofficial patch notes. And then what else have we got going on here? We've got some new champion tags, a new loading screen. We never really got the Hydra head from the last loading screen. I'm not sure what happened there. Player room, is there an actual update coming for Hydra? What's the situation? I know there was a roadmap. We seem to have lost that somewhere. There's a new filter in the team selection interface, which is actually quite useful for finding things if you want to search by tags. Like I was using it yesterday for the live arena because it wasn't updating the recently used for live arena. Then we got some rebalances. This has not been a very big rebalance. I feel like Suzerain Catone has got a reasonable update. They've basically increased his damage, so he's much better in terms of a damage dealer. Not enough that he's going to be super crazy. We'll talk about the multiplier changes in the unofficial patch notes when we look at the new champions, but effectively they've kind of made him now where he always places weaken and then has a less guaranteed chance to place a decreased defense. So you basically get a decreased defense and weaken reasonable, on a reasonable amount of time on an AoE. So that's nice to change that. If you haven't got an AoE weaken and decreased defense on a single skill, then obviously he can do that. His damage multipliers have been lifted so that he's more relevant to the current sort of damage profile of champions being released in today's game. Hellhades didn't really receive any damage changes, but they have changed his skill utility around a fair bit. But I don't really feel like anything that they've changed here makes a massive difference to this champion. It feels like it's kind of the same champion. It doesn't really do anything. What Hellhades is very good at is getting you through faction wars if you don't have very good champions in that faction. Now, this was like when it first came out 2 years ago. There are a lot more powerful champions in factions now that can help you get through faction wars, but he's still very good at putting that Valkyrie wave on stage 21 on full cooldown. That's kind of like where you're using him. What I tend to find with some of these changes here is you end up finding they're more of a pain to beat on Doom Tower waves than they actually are useful for your own roster. So, when we fight these Hellhades now on the Doom Tower waves, we can't just one-shot them with Seer. We never used to be able to, but now they're going to come back with 20%, the turn meters stay the same. They're going to have what's the passive here? He's now going to come heal himself a bit more than he did before, so 20% more healing, so we have to kill 20% more HP. He's going to fill his turn meter more, so it's just going to make it a little bit harder. But overall, I don't really think anything that this changes has done has really made Hellhades worth bringing out of the vault, in my opinion. Then we've got to change to Aileel. So some people were confused as to what actually happened with Aileel here. Aileel always used to ignore the damage reduction component of Stone Skin. Stone Skin has two parts. It reduces incoming damage, and it places a shield, which is the HP bar of Stone Skin, that you obviously can deplete to remove the buff. And obviously we know once you've got Stone Skin, you're immune to pretty much every debuff in the game. The only thing that really stops you is Warlords and Lockout, essentially. But what Ailill was doing, he was ignoring the damage reduction component, but then he would deal damage to the actual shield of Stoneskin. So you would have to basically get through whatever the effective HP of Stoneskin was before you could start damaging the champion, which is not really what he was intended to do. So the change that they have made for this bug fix is he is now going to ignore all components of Stoneskin, both the damage reduction and the HP. Effectively, they've added ignore shield, for a better word. So it'll deal direct damage to the champion's HP, and obviously if they kill them, they die. So it should mean that Ailill hits harder generally because he has less HP he needs to kill, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Ailill is now top tier damage dealer. His A2 is strong. It will now kill people probably, but the other abilities are still problematic. You know, the AoE removes the debuffs, but doesn't actually have the ability to place anything, because if you've got block debuffs, then it kind of doesn't counteract it. His A1 is only a single time steal. He also is subject to polymorph. There's problems with Ailill that kind of limits his playstyle. But at least now that he is going to actually ignore the Stoneskin correctly as we expected. Then I always like to cover this, as we saw with the Hydra change, the drama that we had last week. These other improvements and battle fixes sometimes are very important. Turns out the Hydra change was significantly important and it completely broke the game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they fixed a bug where the Hydra's Head of Decay maximum HP actually now destroyed what the skill description said, which was 75% of your total HP. Apparently it was always meant to do that, even though it's been in the game for 18 months and bugged. And we quickly realized that is a traumatic and impossible thing to do because of the way that it is coded. The Head of Decay's coding destroys 15%. So when you heal someone, it takes 15% of the total heal and destroys your maximum HP, which means even if you don't need the healing, it destroys your max HP. This is why Leech was a massive problem. You know, you hit it with a maximum HP on full HP, you lose all your HP bar. Whereas Miracle Heal only heals the proportion of the amount you restore of missing HP. So you could never actually use Miracle Heal properly because Miracle Heal would require you to have missing HP, whereas the Head of Decay doesn't require you to have any missing HP. I still feel like the correct fix should have been either make Miracle Heal on the total heal so that it matches Head of Decay, or Head of Decay should only take away 15% of the heal that you replace from your missing HP. So if I heal 20,000 but I only need to restore 2,000, it should destroy 15% of the 2,000. But the fix they put in place now obviously is they have just put it back to 25% and changed the description so it's always 25%. Fine. I still think they should bug fix it so that things work correctly, but at least we can actually play Hydra again. Is there anything else in here? We've got a new UI for the arena tokens and keys. Yes, I am aware that when you've got clan versus clan, that visual kind of overlaps it. I know they're going to fix that probably. It's just an oversight. Fix some game freezes in Sand Devil, fine. They fixed that bug that people were talking about with Michinaki and Akimtum in Hydra, specifically that it was being reported. But if Michinaki and Akimtum is in the same thing, it can kind of break the game. So now they should be able to play together properly. Excessive RAM usage, great, that's cool. Fixed a bug with a closed window, whatever. Bugs, visual bugs, visual bugs. That is everything. So obviously the big update here is Live Arena. We're going to be talking about that now. Let's head over to the unofficial patch notes. So before I get into this, I always put the disclaimer. This is information that I have acquired from reverse engineering the client information. It's not server related information. It is stuff that is statically stored in your client, such as champion information, different things like that. So it's all about the interpretation of that code. I'm pretty good at interpreting it these days. I pretty much understand what is going on. So the information I'm giving you here is the interpretation of the behind the scenes, what's going on, and we're breaking it down so that you know what's happening. However, it's not official player release. This is not official information, so it's always subject to misinterpretation. So, you know, sometimes I will make a minor mistake here or there. So let's just talk about a few general notes. The great champion Jotun has now discovered that apparently one N is not enough for him. He is now called Jotun with two N's. I thought this is quite funny and silly. I don't really know why they changed it. But if obviously when you run a website with a URL, it kind of messes up everything. So we've changed it on the website. If you're looking for Jotun with one N, you won't find him. He's two N's now. And of course, Quintus the Triumphant cannot be acquired from any other sources other than Live Arena, which means he needs an empowerment champion. And the champion they've chosen is Baron. So empower at your own peril. Let's talk about the Zeal artifact set. Obviously, there's two new artifact sets that are going to come with Live Arena. Every time you win 35 battles, you get a chest. I don't actually have the percentage drop rates for the chest. I cannot find them in the static information. The in-game client kind of gives us an indication of what you can get. So gold chest, for example, you can get in mythical gear. Bronze chest, I think you can only get rare, legendary, rare and epic gear, but it's all 5 to 6 stars. So you'll never get any 4-star gear from Live Arena. The two new sets are Impulse and Zeal. Impulse is basically 30% reflex with 12% speed. So you're trading more reflex for speed. It depends on what you want to do, right? You might be able to acquire more impulse pieces than Ice Golem if you don't want to farm Ice Golem. Generally though, if you really want the reflex, it's not really better than reflex because you're 10% down on your probabilities. But if you want the speed with reflex, it might be an interesting option. Zeal is a bit unique because it's the first set that actually does direct multiplicative damage. We have sets that ignore defense. We have sets that give you stat bonuses like attack, like crit damage. We don't really have sets that go increase the damage that I output, which is what Zeal is going to do. So you get 2 bonuses with Zeal. You get an additive crit damage bonus. So it's going to give you just plus 25% into your build. And then we get 30% bonus multiplier that scales based on the target. Now I've put 30% here because I'm assuming you're going to hit 100% HP target. Otherwise, Zeal is worthless. That's the kind of TLDR here. If you're not hitting 100% maximum HP, almost in all scenarios in an arena setting, Savage, Cruel, Lethal is going to be a better combo. Let's just have a look at a quick Excel sheet that explains this in more detail. So the biggest challenge with Zeal is how Ignore Defense works. So when you have Savage or Lethal or Savage Cruel, you gain 30% Ignore Defense. Now, Ignore Defense is not linear. The more of it you get when you pass in certain thresholds of defenses, the more valuable it becomes. It's almost like a bit of a bell curve in the sense that once you start getting to like 9,000 defense, you start losing, you don't get much. Once you get to like the mid-range of like 4,000 to 3,000, Ignore Defense actually does a lot of work. And then once you get like to the 1,500 and below, you're not really gaining much from Ignore Defense because the bosses generally don't reduce that much damage when they have that little defense. So what I've done here is I've mapped out a quick Excel graph that kind of shows the range of damage and where things matter. So we're working on the fact that we hit for 90,000, just a figure. It doesn't really matter. We could change this to 120,000. It would result in the same percentages. And we're going to assume you've got 250% crit damage in your build. Now, even though bonus crit damage is additive, basically you get more value the less crit damage you have from the set, right? So if you're at 300%, then the bonus crit damage is going to be less valuable than if you're at 100% crit damage, just the way that crit damage calculation here is working. Now, what is important is how much innate skill Ignore Defense, basically bonus Ignore Defense on top of your artifacts you have. So if you basically have someone like a Trunda Gilt Mallet has no Ignore Defense. Yes, she can get it from Helm Smasher, but let's just assume she doesn't get it. So if we were to put Trunda in Savage Lethal, well, you can see if she was attacking a target with 1,000 defense, she would hit for about 215,000 damage here of that 90,000. Because we're taking the 90,000 and we're applying the damage reduction formula that defense generates to reduce the incoming damage we're getting. And this goes all the way up to 50,000 on the 8,000 defense. The numbers on the left here, these are the target's defense number. Now, if we are applying a Zeal bonus to this, you can see the green is highlighted that Zeal is stronger than Savage because Zeal is going to give us, if we're hitting 100% target, 30% bonus damage. So because on 1,000 defense and we have no bonus Ignore Defense, we actually generate 23% more damage from Zeal on a Trunda style ability. Why? Because Ignore Defense is actually not having that much of an impact because the target's defense reduction is quite low already. When we get up to sort of the mid-range, the 2,000 to 4,000, which is probably typical for an arena. Arena, I think, if you're not debuffing, is around about 3,000 to 4,000 without an increased defense buff. Then you can see that unless you're above the sort of 50% mark, then Zeal is actually not better than Savage Cruel because now you're actually needing to ignore a fair proportion of the defense. It actually makes quite a big difference. So we can see here that a 4,000 defense target with just Savage Lethal or Savage Cruel would be around about 88,000 versus 95,000. So it's still better for Zeal. So if you have no Ignore Defense, then probably Zeal is better. Likewise, if you have 100% Ignore Defense, take a Shamael, for example, or a Royal Huntsman or a Whisper A2, well, Savage Lethal is not going to do any benefit for you. You're going to hit a static number, whereas 25% more damage or 30% more damage from Zeal is just basically more damage. So if you've got 100% Ignore Defense in your abilities, Zeal by far is a better damaging ability than Savage Cruel. It's probably the highest damaging set in the game outside of raw stats, right? You still need to get good builds. If the Zeal, is not very good gear, there's no point putting it on. You still need to do a proper damage assessment, use the optimizer, use your Excel sheets, whatever you want to do. But effectively, if you're at 100% Ignore Defense, then Zeal is the go-to damage set. If you have 0 bonus skill ignore defense, or no other sources of ignore defense, and all you're relying on is the artifact set, then generally Zeal is good for one-hit wonders. Now, what you've got to be careful of is someone like a Trunda has 2 independent hits. She hits once. If they're not stunned, she hits again. So the damage will recalculate. So you will get 1 hit at 30,000, at 30%, and then you'll get another hit, probably if they're below HP, at a lower value. So Zeal isn't necessarily guaranteed to be good for someone like a double hitter. If you've got someone who just hits once on a massive AoE, then Zeal with no bonus skill ignore defense or anything like that is probably better than Savage Cruel. However, if you add some bonus ignore defense into your skill, someone like a Constantine who has 10% for a decreased defense and a leech, someone like a Hellhades who has 15% on their abilities, obviously if you were to do sort of the meta champions like a Baron, for example, if a Baron went in here with 50%, you would see that Zeal is not good for Baron. You just get more from Savage Cruel because you're able to get more ignore defense with your Savage Lethal. If we go to, like, say, the Hellhades level, we can see Hellhades is pretty okay at the high point, but it's almost marginally not worth it, which means once champions start falling below the maximum HP value, then you might as well go for the Savage Cruel because you're going to quickly realize that Zeal is not good for you. So in a general sense, if you have any sort of champions that hit multiple times or they have some sort of ignore defense bonus within their abilities, you would probably stick with Savage Lethal. It's just better. If you have champions that hit once and they have no bonus ignore defense, then you're going to want to go for Zeal because it's generally more damage. That is the TLDR here of Zeal. So let's talk about live arena points. And what I mean by points is the amount of ranking you gain when you win and lose, and also what you need to climb the live arena ladders. So we have a bronze 1 to 4, silver 1 to 4, gold 1 to 4. There is no gold, 5, or platinum so far in live arena. There's been some confusion about how we climb. Do we lose any points? I'm going to clarify it here. Whenever you win a battle in live arena, whether you win bronze, silver, or gold, you gain 5 points. That is not changeable. It doesn't matter what tier you're in. Whenever you win, you gain 5 points. In bronze 1 to 4, however, when you lose, you don't lose any points. And also, if you don't play the game, you don't play live arena, you won't decay in bronze at all. You'll stay where you are. The only way you can really decay in points is if you're not playing the game mode. Otherwise, you pretty much you only lose, you have to participate to lose points. In silver 1, however, and silver 1 above, this goes all the way up to gold 4. There's no differences or deviations within the tiers. Silver 1 to gold 4, whenever you lose a fight, you're going to lose 4 ranking points. So you win 5, you lose 4. In bronze, you don't. And obviously in bronze, if you don't play the game, you don't lose points. In silver 1 above, if you don't have at least 1 arena fight every 5 days, you will start losing 5 points a day until you hit bronze, or until you basically hit the point where you can't decay anymore. What this basically means is it's quite easy to climb, in the sense that as long as you have a positive win rate, you will always start climbing the ladder. You're never going to naturally decay, because as long as you keep having a positive win rate, you're just going to keep adding points. There doesn't appear to be any sort of ranking reset like we have in Classic Arena, or any sort of system that's going to cause you to lose points. You can't passively lose points on an arena defense. You only lose points if you lose, and as long as you maintain a positive win rate, you will keep climbing. So what I anticipate will happen with live arena is pretty much everyone will end up in gold at some point, which is why I think everyone will be able to earn Quintus at some point. Let's talk about the live arena battle rules. Some of you have seen the icon in the game. Probably nobody's actually seen it in action yet because you can't get into gold just yet. I think one person has managed to make it into silver after day 1, and that's a lot of gem consumption. So this only applies once you hit gold. In gold, you get this new thing called battle rules. What it basically means is there can be no duplicate champions in the battle entirely. So if the enemy picks Duchess, you can't pick Duchess, they can't pick another Duchess. If the enemy picks Marichka, you cannot pick Marichka. You can't have duplicates at all. That's what the battle rules means. Now, it is quite a significant change, because right now I've seen some people go double Taras, double Marichka. I've seen some teams go, well, I'll pick 2 Duchesses, or I'll pick 2 of something. And you can't really ban out because you don't know what's what. However, once you're in gold, they won't be able to do that, so you can ban that single champion. Also, champion pairings can be counterpicked. So if the enemy has got Taras and you want to pick your Marichka, he can't put the pairing together. If you want the Duchess, they can't get the Duchess. It's going to make the coin flip at the start very difficult. It's going to change the way you draft. The meta in gold will be totally different to bronze and silver. But that is what the battle rules means. You can't pick the same champion as someone else, and the other person cannot pick a duplicate of that champion. Now let's talk about matchmaking. How does it work? Obviously, it's a very dark art. I don't know fully. I can just see what the static information shows. What it looks like it shows at the moment is the matchmaking system will look for an opponent that is within 20 ranking points, positively or negatively, of your current rank. So if your rank is 1000, you can find someone between 980 and 1020. Now, there could be some deviations or server logic that kind of goes, if I can't find someone, expand that out a little bit more after a certain period of time. But I know that is what it's doing in the current form. It's basically looking for that range. It's about a 40-point range. But I will say that there is coded logic for a bot player, and this makes sense. This is not a bad thing. I don't want this to come across as, oh my god, they've injected bots in the game. Remember what I've just told you about ranking points. Everyone is going to end up in gold so long as they maintain a positive win rate. So as long as the population keeps moving together, then eventually everyone's going to be in the same tier. Well, if a new player comes in and they're at bronze 1, how the heck can they play the game if there's no one playing? It's different to classic arena. You put a draft up. If you're semi-active or you're semi-AFK, then those the arena defenses just sit there. You always have someone to hit. You always have some sort of account to put in there. There's always someone to fight. Whereas in live arena, you physically have to opt into a fight. So if everyone is physically opting into gold fights and there's no population in bronze, then that bronze player can't actually get into where all the population exists. So they've put a system in place where if you're waiting for too long a period, you'll get a bot. So at least you can keep climbing to get to where the rest of the population is. I don't think it's a problem, because I think as long as people like the game mode and there's reasons to fight the game mode, there'll always be a population in a certain tier. But it will just mean that players who are starting will need a bit of a helping hand to get into the population tier where everyone exists, which I think is going to be Gold 4. I'd imagine Gold 4 is going to be like Classic Arena, where everyone just sits in Gold 5 Arena and there's kind of like a weird meta within one tier. And finally, the Arena token refill systems. I think I've got the upgrades at the right prices, but I can't remember what the fourth upgrade price was. So I think it was 50. I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, every day you're going to get 5 live arena fights. And then if you fight those 5 live arena fights, you're going to get another 5 tokens. So a free-to-play person can do 10 live arena fights a day. There are additional refills available for gems, and that is costed like tag team tokens, right? So every upgrade, it costs exponentially more and more and more, up to a total of 6. But what I didn't realize is there is actually no limit to the amount of refills you can get. So if you want to go absolutely crazy and burn gems, then you can do so if you want to. There is no limit. Obviously, I would imagine at some point you're going to outrank everyone, but I've already seen that someone has done 99 battles in one day, or basically within a 24-hour window. So there will be people who will burn gems for that Quintus specifically. But the increase here goes 6 times in total: 10, 20, 35, 50, 70, then 100 gems. And every subsequent upgrade after that 100 gems is going to be another 100 gems, and so forth and so forth. Now, what I would argue probably is if you are interested in getting Quintus at a more rapid pace, the first 2 upgrades for 30 gems a day is not too bad. That gives you another 10 arena fights, and that can basically get you like half the amount of time to get your Quintus. So I think that's an interesting trade-off. If you maintain a positive win rate, then actually you can get a lot of your gems back from the milestone rewards. We're going to talk about actually the Quintus acquisition rate in a moment. Let's talk about the area bonuses Great Hall here then. So some things that I just wanted to comment on. It's pretty self-explanatory. You win the medals in the live arena. There's more as you climb the tier. I think Gold 4, for example, gives you 70 gold, like gold medals. I'm going to call it medals. It could be banners. It could be crests. I don't really know what they're calling them. I'm going to call it gold medals. You get 70 at Gold 4. Now, the difference with the area bonuses there is no exchange rate that you get in the normal Great Hall. In the normal Great Hall, if you use a gold medal on a bronze upgrade, it costs you far less bronze medals than it does gold medals, right? You get an exchange rate of like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Normally, it would cost you 4 bronze medals for that upgrade. It's only going to cost you 1 gold medal in the normal Great Hall. We don't have that in the area bonuses. It's all 1-to-1. The value of a bronze medal is the same value as a gold medal. The only difference is those medals can't upgrade a higher tier of medal. So I cannot use bronze medals to upgrade my silver, and I cannot use silver to upgrade my gold, but I can use gold to upgrade all of the others. But they are all 1-to-1. So, I think it doesn't really matter because I think once you get to gold, you're just going to be farming gold and off you go. There are gradings also which increase the cost of the tiers. For some reason, someone thought it was a good idea to add potion keeps. I don't really know why. Nobody really cares about potion keep bonuses. 20% ignore defense is not going to make a big deal to something I can farm with any 5 champions at rank 6. Now, I don't mean to probably hate on some of the newer players. They're probably thinking it's really difficult. But trust me, in 6 to 12 months' time, you'll be looking at it going, why did I need to upgrade the potion keep bonus when Sand Devil requires 700 accuracy or 500 accuracy, when Iron Twins requires 500 accuracy, and those aren't in there? Why have we got potion keeps? But that's, again, a topic for another video. But just wanted to point out that grade 1, if you want to upgrade a grade 2, is 100% more medal cost than a grade 1, and grade 3 is 100% more than grade 2, which is 200% more than grade 1. So you basically mean the higher value ones, which are the clan bosses, Hydra and Demon Lord, they're grade 3. They're going to cost you 200% more than the potion keeps and 100% more than the dungeons. Let's talk about some time scales for different things now that we've got added to the game. So the way you earn Quintus is you basically complete your milestone rewards, and once you hit 4,000 milestone rewards, which is I think gold 3 in Live Arena, you will have earned enough fragments to summon Quintus. You can't summon him from a shard, you can't get him anywhere else. It is only available from Live Arena. So that basically means we can calculate roughly an estimated time of how long it's going to take me to get there. We start at 900 as a ranking point, and then we need to get to 4,000. So we need to earn 3,100 ranking points. Now we know from previously that you only get 5 points per increase, but you don't lose any points in the bronze acquisition. So once you hit 1,300, that's the entry point for silver. So the difference, you basically have 400 points where you, even if you lose some battles, it won't penalize you. So we have to factor that in here. So what that basically means is at gold, we basically have wins at 5, silver wins at 5, bronze at 5. So we can take that 3,100 divided by 5, and it'll basically tell us we need around about 620 fights or 620 wins to basically get up to the 4,000. That assumes if you win 100%. We obviously can't do that. We're going to change the calculation here. So I fought Live Arena yesterday. I fought 30 fights, and my account is well developed, I would say. I wouldn't say it's a Kraken tier. Like, I don't have the Taras, Marichka, Yumiko, Warlord, Siphi, Rotus. I don't have the arena meta. So I was fighting with a Duchess, Pythian, Constantine kind of setup with a Baron hero there. So I had some good champions, but I wouldn't say I was the top tier. So I'm considering myself as like A tier of players, like the A tier, not the S tier, not the Krakens, not the Plat Pushers, the A tier. People who basically can get into top gold 5 without even stressing, people who get into gold tag team arena. I was winning around about 66% of my fights. So I'm going to use a 63% win rate. And we're going to have 2 models. We're going to have the free-to-play model, which is 10 fights a day. And I'm going to have the paid model where you buy the first 2 refills. That's 30 gems a day. And that is 20 fights. And that is the paid model. So if we are winning at 63% per day, it means the free-to-play will win 6 fights a day. So we get 400 points for free. So that basically means if you're winning 6 fights a day, it's going to take you 13 days to get to Silver 1 on a free-to-play schedule of 10 fights a day. Then once we get past that, it's going to take us longer because now we're losing points. So we're going to gain 6 times 5. We're going to lose 4 times 4. So we're always going to climb, but it's going to take us longer. So at a 63%, it means that the amount of points that we get per day go from 30 to 14, which means we actually need to spend a lot more time. It's going to take us 193 days to acquire the remaining ranking points to climb up to that 4,000 breakpoint. So what it should basically mean, if you are running 10 fights a day on a 63% win rate, on average, it should take you 206 days to get to Quintus. Now, this is obviously very subjective to the win rate. If we change the win rate down to 60%, it could change a big difference. Obviously, I'm rounding the figures here, so it's still 60. If we went to a 50% win rate, the difference is huge. It's almost double the amount of time. That 1 extra win a day is massive. If we went to a 70%, then it's 128 days. So really what I would say for people who want to get Quintus, aim for 60 plus. If you get 60% win rate, then you will get your Quintus in 200 days. However, if you're losing, you will never get Quintus. So there is a balance here. If you need to make sure you have a positive win rate, which I think is reasonably accessible. What I think is going to happen for a lot of players is they're going to put their teams in that they're used to using. And because everyone needs to naturalize their rank, right? At the moment, everyone was at bronze 1, so everyone was either fighting a Kraken or you were fighting a level 40 starter player or level 50 starter player. There was no kind of ranking matchmaking because everyone was in the same boat. But But what will happen is you'll put your arena champions in, and then you'll find a Kraken and you lose to that Kraken. You will climb the arena points until you hit a wall where you're basically getting really people you can't beat yet. Those people will then continue to climb, and then eventually you'll start getting matchmaking with more people around your level or below your level, and then you'll start climbing again. So you will have windows where you have a higher win rate, windows where you have a lower win rate. But I feel like everyone at some point is going to get that like 60% positive win rate situation. You just might need to wait for the whole system to normalize. I would imagine in 12 months time, if I started the game, it would be easier for me to climb than right now. So that's if you're on a free-to-play schedule on a 60% win rate. Now, if you're doing 20 fights a day, then there is a gem cost associated with that, and it does change the picture. It only takes us 7 days to get to Silver 1 because we are winning 60 points a day, not 30. We're doubling up. We're also now gaining 28 points a day, not 14. So we are going to be able to get Quintus from Silver 1 to Gold 3 in 96 days. And the total amount of days that would take us is 103, and it would cost us around about 3,090 gems. Now, you do get 1,050 gems back in the milestones, so that is like a net loss of 2k gems over a 100-day window. But here's the difference. If I upgrade that to 63, that extra win, if we go to 63%, that extra win per day cuts our time down by like a month, and it also cuts the gem cost down. If you can get to 70%, it cuts the gem cost down even further. The time goes down even further. Now, what I would expect is, I think lots of Krakens, the question someone said, how long is it going to take for a Kraken to get there? Well, if a Kraken is basically fighting 100, let's just say they're willing to invest numerous amounts of gems and they're going to buy all refreshes, but they're not going to buy more than the sixth one. Well, that means they've got 40 fights a day on a 75% win rate. It will cost them 7,980 gems, but they will get there in 28 days. Now, I personally think that's probably, like, the champion is worth it, but that's a lot of gem investment. I think the healthy level to do here is you basically go and put yourself in a 20 refill window. That costs you 30 gems a day. Get yourself up to a reasonable win rate of 75%. You'll get there in 2 months. It'll cost you 6,020 gems, but you'll get 1,050 back. So it's only going to cost you 500 gems to basically get there in less than a month. And you also get lots of benefits along the way in terms of the milestone rewards. So that's kind of like Quintus. I expect Krakens will get their Quintus within a month. I think the average free-to-play player will probably get there in about 200 days. Let's talk about the new area bonuses. The question is, how quickly can I fill up my new area bonus Great Hall? Well, there are a total 8 stats across each individual row. We've got Ignore Defense as a new one, Speed, crit damage, accuracy, resistance, attack, HP, and defense. There's 8 individual stats per tier. We've mapped out here the individual costs for each rank based on the grading. As I mentioned before, grade 2 is 100% more than grade 1, grade 3 is 100% more than grade 2, 200% more than grade 1, which means that a grade 3 full upgrade is about 10,800 crests. Grade 2 is 5,400 and grade 1 is 2,700 for one particular stat. So we obviously need to multiply that with 8. There are 2 grade 3 areas, Hydra and Clan Boss, 4 grade 2 areas, which are the 4 primary dungeons, Spider, Dragon, Ice Golem, and Fire Knight. And then only the potion keeps for grade 1. I would recommend people you don't bother with grade 1 at all until like you've got excess crests. I would hope at some point someone in Playroom is going to go, maybe we should add Sand Devil and Iron Twins, because those were the ones that I would want the points in more than anything else. So let's just look at how we can translate it. I'm going to assume that you're all at gold 4, just for the simplistic math. You're going to gain medals on the way to gold 4. I'm not saying you won't, but let's just assume you're at gold 4, that you're going to get 70 medals a day, a win. Well, if you're on a win rate of 75% and you're fighting 40 battles a day, this is the Kraken tier, you would earn 2,100 crests a day. So basically, you can completely upgrade your entire area bonuses haul in 175 days at that kind of win rate with that kind of gem investment. It would cost you a hell of a lot of gems, like a hell of a lot of gems. We are talking 43,750 gems to do that at that pace. It's very expensive. There's no limiting factor. It's a bit like Classic Arena, right? As long as you win a lot of battles, eventually you'll get there. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly people fill it up and whether they put any time investment. Let's talk about a free-to-play person, right? Let's put you at 10 and let's put you at a 60% win rate. I'm just going to assume you're in goal 4. It's just an easy number. I've got the number of medals here. The gem cost here is only going to cost you 0. So you're not going to cost you any gems. So if you fight 10 battles a day at gold 4 with a 60% win rate, you're going to get 420 crests a day. It's going to take you 874 days to fully max out your area bonuses, which is just about 2.5 years. You can kind of see like the gold, the clan bosses will take you 411 days. The dungeons will take you 411 days. Potion keeps will take you 51 days. Again, I wouldn't put any time investment. So where do I think people, how long is it going to take? I think people will get there in about 3 years based on this upgrade. But obviously the more gems you invest in it, the quicker you upgrade it, you make that judgment and decision for yourselves. Just be careful with the area bonuses. They don't show in your stat sheet by default. You need to use the drop-down selection. I'm fully expecting people to go, why is my speed 2 not working? Why aren't my debuffs landing? Why aren't this happening? Because they've built things in a way that was for a specific area, and therefore when they've gone to a different area, you didn't get the bonus. So there's a risk involved with that. We're going to try everything we can on the optimizer side of things to make sure it's clear and crystal clear as to how to do it. But that's a word of warning. But that's roughly how long. I think a normal player will take about 3 years. I think for a Kraken, they'll probably get it done in about a year. Let's talk about the new multipliers then. We have got Suzerain Catone. He's an upgraded champion. They haven't changed his base stats and they didn't change his A1. They have updated the damage of his multipliers. It's gone from 3.3 on his A2 to a 3.7, which is pretty much no change in the grading. It just lifts him up a little bit. He's now probably on like a Queen Eva tier of nuking, so he's pretty good for campaign farming, but not quite above Ethos. He's just under Ethos. His A3 got the most increase. It went from 2.8 to 3.8. His A3 is actually godlike now. And I think the only reason why his A2 isn't godlike is just because he's very low on the godlike scale, and also I think the A3 is more book damage, so that does have a factor. Do I think this change makes a big difference? Probably for the champion, he's now more usable. But I think generally, you don't really want to be buff removing in arena. So he's not an arena nuker. But if you need like a solid campaign farmer, he's triple AoE, you can put him in a stun set. He's pretty good for that work. Next up, we have Quintus the Triumphant. He is the new live arena champion. He hits like a truck. He will be a top tier clan boss damage dealer, a top tier arena nuker, a top tier wave clearer. But I would say his AoE is very dependent on buff presence. So let's talk about his A1 first. One of the questions we had about his A1 would be, will it repeat the extra hit? His A1 basically goes, attack once. If there are no buffs, attack again, and then repeat the ability. So the way that it's actually coded is go attack 1. Is there a buff? No. Then attack again. Okay, I've done that. Now repeat the attack. Attack once. Is there a buff? No. Attack again. So you get 4 attacks in an optimal setting that you can basically repeat. That basically makes his A1 incredibly strong. I think Fenax's A2, for example, is about an 8.4 or 7.2, something on that range. This guy is going to have basically nearly a 7.6, basic napkin math here, multiply on his A1 with Methodical. He's going to hit really hard. Now his A2 is a 5.5 times attack, single target. It's pretty strong hitting as well. Will remove any buffs. And the A3 is 3.8 times attack. It is rated as godlike, but it is not an arena godlike. It is what I would call an A tier godlike. We're talking champions like Ethos, which doesn't really get much play in the top tier of arena because he doesn't ignore any defense. What makes his AoE stronger is when there are buffs on the target. So whenever there is a single buff, there has to be a buff. It can't do it if there are no buffs. When there is one buff on the target, then for every buff that is on that target, he adds 10% of that target's maximum HP as bonus pure damage. So that means it ignores 100% defense and it cannot crit. You can't modify it in any way. What it'll basically mean is when I hit a target and it's got 6 buffs, I'll do my base skill damage, which probably will do about 40% depending on the damage reduction and different things. And then I just take 60% of the target's HP on top. It means if you have got a Sify Duchess kind of buff setup and there's 6 buffs out on the target, he's going to wreck those teams. He will be the best choice for those teams just because of his passive. If you are doing a standard debuffing situation where you basically strip all the buffs and place decreased defense, he's not that much stronger than any other nuker. You could use anyone else. Like Supreme Elhain will be way stronger than him then because she scales off the debuffs. I feel like his passive is what Supreme Elhain should have had. It is based on buffs. If you need to beat the current arena meta, Quintus is the #1 choice, in my opinion. He outbeats Jorgid. He outbeats someone like Baron because they need to ignore the defense still. This guy doesn't need to ignore any buffs. He goes, oh, you've got like 8 buffs? Cool. You lose 80% of your maximum HP. It's actually insane. It's really strong. And the thing is, it applies to any ability he does. So it's not just like AoE, oh, now I'm done. like Baron, Sky Piercer, now I'm done. This guy goes, okay, you didn't quite die. I'll hit you with A1. You've still got 8 buffs. I'll do another percent of your 80% maximum HP. And it is maximum HP, not current HP. So they'll die. This guy will kill people. I cannot speak highly enough. I think he'll be absolutely insane for Clan Boss as well because of his A1. So I'm looking forward to getting him. I will be pushing Live Arena to try and get him as much as I can. Let's talk about the new Fusion champions here. We've got the first rare. We're going to go rares into the epics, into the legendaries, and then we're going to talk about the Fusion at the end. Probably a lot of people by now are going, get to the rabbit. We all want to know about the rabbit. Thanks for watching so far. It's a long video. It's a big update this week. So we've got Margrave Greenhawk. He's basically an ally protector on a budget form, right? It would be someone, if I was still looking for an ally protector on my free-to-play, which I haven't had time to play, but I will be getting back to playing it soon, he would be a champion I would look to pick up. But it is still a baby version of ally protection. He's HP-based, which means he does no damage. It's weak, but he will stay alive. So there's that going for him. But in terms of a damage profile, he's forgettable. Then we have Lockwine. Lockwine is curiously interesting because of his passive. His passive gives him bonus accuracy for the number of buffs on an enemy. So if there's like 5 buffs on 4 enemies, he's going to get 200 accuracy as an example. So you can build him with a lot of accuracy without actually building him with accuracy because of his passive. He has a 1409 attack, which is actually rather low, but it's probably like mid-range epic tier, and the speed of 98. His problem though is he just doesn't quite do enough damage. He's got an A1, which does 3.5 times attack, it's strong. An AoE, which does 3.8 times attack, which is strong. And then a double hit single target, which is 2.9 times attack, and that is strong. The idea is the A3 is meant to reset when you kill someone. The A2 removes a veil buff. I do feel like there might be a bug where it should be 75% chance to remove a veil and then 25% chance to move a random buff, not the other way around. But it's been released in its current form, so maybe that's what they want. It feels like it's meant to be a counter to Duchess, but he just doesn't hit hard enough to be relevant. So unfortunately, a bit of a meh epic, especially in a faction where you've got someone like Mr. Dithey and Ruella who do hit really hard. Next, we've got Wirren on the Silken. This champion is designed for the faction wars that is going to be coming out in the next couple of months. It is a epic reviver. It's there to basically help you revive your champions. It's not going to deal damage, but a 4.2 times attack is average on an A1. She's designed to help carry you through the team, and she has that A3 revive. She's a bit like the Tagors they add, you know, the epic champions that can revive 102 champions that help you get through the faction wars if you don't have the legendary champions. Then we have the Fusion epic, Delaja. Has a curious passive where if a Lizardman gets attacked, he counterattacks, which is actually quite good because his A1 applies poison. So for a clan boss setting, he might be an interesting option if you don't want to go for the Fusion. I would suggest he's not better than the Fusion. Now that we've seen the multipliers, I think the Fusion is actually quite good for damage and it's very interesting. But in terms of a option, if you want to keep the duplicate epic, he's probably okay. He's worth it. He is HP based damage, so his damage is pretty poor. You know, his A1 is a 0.12 times HP times 2. It has a chance to place poisons and it does a very small heal. It's an average attack. And the A2 then is a 0.24 times HP. It's weak, but he does apply a decreased attack. So if you're looking for an early to mid game clan boss champion, he's a very healthy champion. He's going to keep you alive. He's going to be a good option for that because he's going to help deal damage to the clan boss. Pairing with a Venom Mage, pairing with any other Lizardman, like a Krisk or something like this, it could be interesting if you've got those champions. Then we have the Void Legendary Sylvan Watcher, which I'm very disappointed with. I don't feel like this champion is Void quality tier at all. She has been designed exclusively for the Sand Devil. That is where you would use her if you picked this champion. You wouldn't really have much use, maybe some Hydra usages. But the problem is just her kit is not quite like balanced. She has an A1 sleep, which is basically useless if you can't sleep anyone. So, and it's not as good as Siphi because it's not 100% chance either. It's not even 100% in Sand Devils. You can't even rely upon it. So that's a bit awkward to start with. The A2 is a pretty good ability for like places like Hydra in different areas. And then the A3 is a 3-turn cooldown revive on death with block debuffs. So you can see quite quickly she's been designed for the Sand Devil. The only problem is her passive is what made her interesting, but the passive only applies on the first hit and it only applies to her. So you can't use the passive like Sepulchre, which basically can block other people, anyone in your team. It's only herself. It's actually a very selfish passive and it's only the first attack. So you really find no value in that passive. It's not even 100% with all those conditions. But in terms of a damage dealer here, she's designed as a support champion, so don't expect her to deal damage in the Sand Devil. If you pick up this champion, Commiserations, I think it's a pretty weak champion, and you will use her in Sand Devil if you want to run that. But then you might already have a Mother Sibel, or you might be running the Ninja Ranieri comp, or you might be running a solo Chronum. There are better options than this champion. And finally, after about an hour of this video, it's a long video, we have got the Razelvarg. the rabbit that everyone is talking about probably at the moment. When I first saw this kit, I thought we couldn't speed tune him. Turns out Deadwood is a genius and he's managed to make clan boss teams. Turns out other people are geniuses and they figured it out. I think the important thing about this champion is you can predict when he is going to apply those speed bonuses, which means you can speed tune it. It also carries across waves. So if you use his A3 once each wave and there are no other speed buffs on the target so you can actually apply it, then you can basically predict the speed tuning. That increases his value a lot, because if you can't speed tune him, he kind of like eradicates him from a lot of content. The thing I also didn't know when I first saw him come out was I didn't think his damage would be that relevant. But actually, the speed multiplier is very relevant to this champion. It's very strong. So he hits a lot harder than I thought he was going to hit. So he's got a base attack of 1520, which is pretty good. It's not amazingly crazy, but it's good. And a base speed of 110 for a damage dealer. That's insane. Pretty much support champions get 110 speed. Your Arbiters, your Kimmies are at 115. People like your Elva Autumnborns, they're the ones that have high speeds, not your damage dealer. So it's pretty good that he can go already really fast from his base stat. He's got a 20% aura as well on all battles, so it's really powerful for your teams. If you're in the early to mid game, this champion is like really quite good to put in any team. He's going to carry you. So let's talk about how his kit works first. The passive will give him up to 100 bonus speed. The only way he can do that is if he places a speed buff on himself or an ally, but he has to physically place that speed buff. So if an ally has a 2-turn speed buff and he tries to apply a 2-turn speed buff, it won't actually count. The speed buff has to be of a less duration or not there at all for him to be able to place it. And that is a factor that you have to count. It has to actually physically place the buff. And it has to be him placing the buff. So we know how it places. Once you get that, it'll go until you get to 100 speed. And then all of that factors into his damage. In essence, the TLDR, for every 100 speed, you get 1 bonus attack multiplier. So if I have 200 speed, I get 2 plus whatever his base multiplier is. So let's just look here. On an A1, he's going to do an attack multiplier. He has a base multiplier of 0.45, and then that multiplies with the speed divided by 100. So if it's 200, it's 0.45 times 2. If it's 300, it's 0.45 times 3. And then it hits 3 times. With the 2 AoEs, they have the same multiplier. He has a 1.5 base attack multiplier, but instead of multiplying now, it's going to add on top. So again, if I've got 200 speed, it's 1.5 times 2, which means it's a 3.5 times attack multiplier. Now, what's unique about Razelvarg is he has 2 stats that he can gain damage from. Whereas other champions like Rotus that has HP and attack bonuses, you can't really grow the HP unless he grows his own HP. And like same as Mountain King, can't really increase maximum HP. With this dude, when you have increased speed and increased attack on a target, he's gaining 2 forms of damage multiplication bonuses. So if he has 200 speed and you put speed buff on him, then the multiplier isn't 2 anymore, it's 2.6. So you actually get 0.6 more attack multiplier from the speed buff on top of the 1.5 times attack that you get from the attack buff. So it actually really adds up. We're going to have a look at a graph in a minute to basically show how these multipliers sort of calculate back into a single attack multiplier. But effectively, you get the bonus on the passive, you get his aura, you get all these different things, speed buff, increased attack buff. It makes his damage extremely high. He's godlike across the board. He is godlike across the board. He's very strong. So let's just do some calculations here just to show you how it moves the multipliers. So let's just assume we've got a 200 base speed multiplier here. This is 200 once I've built the champion. Well, with the bonuses that he gets from his aura and the bonus 100 passive, he's going to end up with 322 speed before any speed buff. So if we say my average build equation that determines based on a base stat how much attack you get is about 5,060 attack. Let's just assume you've got 5,060 attack with a 322 speed. Well, that would normally give you a calculated multiplier of 4.72 without any buffs. If we were to add an increased attack buff, then obviously that doesn't change the calculated multiplier, because effectively the speed is a multiplication of the attack multiplier, not a bonus multiplier. It basically changes your attack value that you can multiply. If we were to run with a speed buff, well, we would go from 322 speed to 419 speed. That would increase the multiplier from 4.72 to 5.686. So you can see how this kind of scales. So it's AoE with 200 base speed, with an increased speed and an increased attack, is 7,590 times 5.6. Now a typical AoE nuke is around about 4 times attack. So he is quite above the high average with these double buffs. You can see that the combined buffs the increase attack and the increase speed is giving him 81% bonus damage. It's very high. It's very big. It's very impactful. In terms of the A1, well, we can see at 322 speed without any buffs is a 1.449 multiplier. If we were to add both buffs, it goes up to a 1.8837 multiplier, and that's a 95% increase. So because we multiply the A1, we don't add to the A1, to the AoEs. The multiplication of the A1 means you get more value from the increased speed buff than you would do from the AoEs. Now, if we were to go crazy and we would go, okay, well, what happens if we add 300 speed? Well, the more speed you add on an AoE perspective and an A1 perspective, the more damage bonus you gain from that increased speed. If you had 300 speed with all those bonuses, you would be running at 549 speed by the end of it with an increased speed buff. You would be at 6.9 times AoE multiplier. So he's one of those unique champions here where you can go fast and still deal as much damage as someone who's going slower. And you can build him slower and actually go fast. He's very flexible. He's actually really fun. I'm more interested in getting him now that I've seen his multipliers, because the speed is a relevant factor to his damage. Fire Knight Hard, as an example, you can run a champion. Normally, you need to run him really fast, which means you can't deal damage. With this multiplier here, you can run him at 300 speed and still do as much damage as if you were running him a lot lower. You might have to drop the attack down to, like, say, 4,000, but you can see that the multiplier doesn't really matter. If we were running at 4,000 with 300 speed, we'd be at 41,900 damage. If we were at 5,060 but going at 200 speed, we're about 43,000. So you can see that the difference of 1,000 attack to 100 speed is about the same. The attack is a little bit more, but it's about the same. So there you go, guys. That is a long video. I think this is going to be the longest patch notes video I've ever done. I will put chapters in, of course. If you followed me this far, well done. You've survived the whole patch notes video. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos from this channel, I do a monthly patch note breakdowns. I do more videos. I've got a new Hydra clan boss team I'm working on that hopefully will be coming out in a couple of days. And I'll obviously be working on some live arena builds. If you want to see that content, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button as well if you really like this video, and all of it will come straight into your feed. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.